Welcome in, everyone. I'm Donovan. Today I'm here with C.L. Harmon. He's going to talk to us about a couple of his books. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Donovan. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about these
Yeah,
books.
absolutely. So let's just dive right in with chopping down the tree of knowledge. Tell me about the chopping down the tree of knowledge.
So this book was born out of frustration, and it was a the premise of the book is how our belief systems fail us and why they fail. And a simple explanation of a belief system is something that we cultivate from basically the time we're born. What our parents and grandparents and school teachers and clergy and what they imprint upon us. And at a certain age, we take that information and we pick and choose. And at that point, we take what we like and we develop a belief system. And then that becomes the core of how we live our lives. So what happens at some point when you do that and you make all of your decisions, based on that belief system, and then you find out one day it's wrong. That's what happened. That's what happened to me.
Okay.
So I was very stubborn, in my life, and I could never really get things to work the way that I felt like they should or that I wanted them to work. And so I began, I think along the way I saw cracks and I began to question different things, but I was very stern about not veering off the course of what my belief system was until I reached a point in life where I'm like, there is something clearly wrong. And so to delve in a little bit deeper, I'm a Christian. And so my fundamental belief system was based in Christianity and a strong belief in God.
Okay.
And so that part of the belief system was not wrong, but the interpretation of what I believed God does in our lives, that was clearly skewed.
Okay.
And out of that, the book came, and if you would like me, to elaborate a little bit more on that, it became. I tell people when I speak about the book, I tell them, I said I was very, very angry and very, very frustrated at the point when this book came about, and because my belief system was rooted in Christianity, and I felt that my decisions that a lot of choices in my life had been made in faith, and it seemed as though that faith had failed me, and it seemed like that my understanding was not that it pointed to the signs that God was wrong. And so basically, I would like to say that I started this book out of some sense of enlightenment, but I did not. I started it out of anger.
It's like a sense of betrayal in a
Yes,
way.
exactly. I felt like God had dropped the ball, if you will. And so because of that, everything in my life that had not gone, I don't want to say everything, let's just narrow that down to my career as a writer. That the fact that it had not panned out the way that I had envisioned it was God's fault. Now, the only way that I knew to deal with that, I couldn't seem to get the answers from God that I wanted. So the only way I knew to deal with that was to use my gift, which He told me to do, to seek the answers that I wanted. He said that I had this voice that came to me, and it was like, I'm not going to tell you, I don't owe you an explanation, was sort of the message, but you already have the answers. Use the gift and find them. And so I did. I began to write.
Okay.
Through the course of the book, what I found out was that in the beginning, it was all God's fault. By the middle of writing this book, we had a shared responsibility. By the end of the book, it was my fault. So that is a major leap to, anyway, but it wasn't about blame, it was about understanding. And so that's really where the book came from. It was born out of, I think I would call it a profound sense of loss for for a dream that I had that had not materialized in the way that I had wanted it to.
Okay. All right.
So
So this idea was mostly born out of failure, I assume, in some way, or that betrayal, or was that the main idea that it came from?
it, yeah, it came from being frustrated. Okay. I didn't really know what I was seeking other than this sort of straight across direct answer as to why things hadn't worked. And as I think we all learn as we live long enough, life is never that simple.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, and I wasn't at a point in my life where my faith was strong enough to understand that it's never God's fault. But what I started to understand was, as I started peeling back these layers, I started to realize that there's something else going on here. And the more I wrote, the more I began to understand what that was, what that was, and I really began to grasp onto the fact that everything revolved around a belief system that had that was never right in the beginning. Okay. So and so the premise of the book becomes I'm chopping down the tree of knowledge, because basically each of us have our belief system is our tree of knowledge. That's where we go. That's what we rely on. That's how we make our decisions. And so by the time I finished it, because I didn't have the title came towards the end when I realized what had actually transpired in my life and how I'd gotten to the point where I was at was, hey, you know what? My tree of knowledge was flawed. I'm going to cut it down. And so, so chopping that down was my way of saying, I'm chopping it down, and I'm planning a new one that works. Okay. The problem is in the beginning, I didn't know all of that. And so clearly, as I would write, I would go back and I would reference back, and things would begin to make more sense. Anyway, so that's really where it comes from.
Okay.
I'm not sure what your next question is going to be, but I'll kind of maybe jump ahead here. But one of the main thing that I began to understand was that at some point, okay, in our lives, when you really begin to look at your life and you begin to look at life in general, you begin to understand that God gives and gives and gives and gives and gives. Okay. And at some point, he's like, okay, I need you to start giving to each other. Okay. I'm going to give to you your whole lives, but as a family, because you're all my children, as a family, you need to be there for each other. Okay. Right. I'm not some genie in the sky that's just giving you everything that you want. But what I am doing is I'm giving you opportunities. Yeah. Okay. I'm giving you opportunities. Anyway, but those opportunities are hidden in other people. So when you break that down, what does that mean? When what that means is that on a spiritual level, the way God looks at it, you're my brother, and everyone in the world is my sibling. Okay. And so as a sibling, you have a responsibility to certain people. You have a responsibility to your siblings, right? You're there for them. They're there for you. I mean, it's ingrained in you. There's like a natural thing that's sort of there. Yeah. So shouldn't that be global? Shouldn't that be with every single person?
You think so?
And so what I began to understand was that a lot of people in life had failed me. Now flip that over. When I began to understand it, I realized I had failed a lot of people. Yeah. Right. Simply because I had not met my responsibilities as a sibling to everyone else. And so I'll give you an example of sure. And there's several examples in the book. But if well, I'll put it like this: everybody in life has had that example, or had that not example, but has had that experience where you didn't get a job, but you knew you were perfect for it. You know, something, you know, you may have needed a loan and everything was in order, but for some reason you didn't get it. Something in life, everybody has that experience. Okay. Have you ever really stopped and wonder why? Because you usually don't get an answer. You're usually like, I think some people, including myself, have gone, how could this have not have happened? I mean, this was like God had his fingerprints all over this. Why did this not happen? Well, guess what? What for somebody with a belief system like me, that's rooted in faith, it's very easy to point a finger and blame God, because God's not in the room with you saying, let me explain myself. Let me explain what happened. Right?
People forget to think about their own actions and how they affect these situations.
So you just nailed it. See,
Yeah.
Donovan, you hit the key. That's the key right there. And so let's take, for example, let's just say that you didn't get a job. Okay. Let's say that you go in, you do the interview, you nail the interview, you're perfect for it. Everybody knows it. But for some reason, there's one person in that interview that doesn't like you because your hair's too long, or doesn't like you because you said something that they didn't like. Okay. Neither of those things have anything to do with your ability to do the job, but it just so happens that that person gets a vote. And that vote causes you to lose that job. That's not God's fault, is it? That person did not make the right decision. And because that person didn't make the right decision, it cost you. Now, God is a loving God. Is like, well, I'm not going to go in there and correct this and make her do this because I've given her free will. But what I am going to do is I'm going to open up another opportunity for you. It's not the one, you know, I'm going to open up another one because I love you. I'm going to do that. But, you know, people say all the time, well, it wasn't meant to be. See, I don't believe in that. I don't believe that. I believe that so many things in life are meant to be, but because people don't act, you know, think of it like this. What if that person in that interview room was that person's brother or sister? They would have given them the job no matter what, right? Okay. As long as they knew that they were the right person for the job. Now, I'm not, you know, there wouldn't have been those little issues in there that would have, you know, said, I don't like the way he said that, or I don't like, you know, I didn't like that response. That wouldn't have been, you know, but otherwise that wouldn't have been there. They would have overlooked those as God overlooks our imperfections all the time, and that person would have gotten the job. Okay. So I feel like in my life and in everybody's life, that's what happens. And I think God looks down and he's like, if you love each other the way that my son loves you, the way that I love you, you wouldn't make those choices. You wouldn't do that. I have no idea what I'm going to pay for gasoline tomorrow. Do you know why that is? Because there are certain people in the world, okay, somewhere in a boardroom somewhere, that are making decisions that I have no input on. Okay. And those people are going to determine how much people pay for gasoline. And this is happening all over the world, right? So now think about what would happen if every single person in that room's intent was to make gasoline, you know, as cheap as they could for every single body on the planet, right? Okay, you would be paying a different price, but that's not the decisions they're making. So you're paying a lot higher premium because their intent is not to better your life. Their intent is to better their own. Their intent is to make more money, to more profit. This happens every day. Okay. You know, now, does God have the power to sit there and change that? Of course he does, but he doesn't. He allows us to make those choices. So, what happens is people in their lives begin to think, we all tend to think more one-sided. Okay, how does this affect me? Okay, and so you know, and like let's go back to the scenario a minute ago of the person, you know, like you don't get the job even though you're perfect for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the one person in that room doesn't give you that job because their nephew needs a job,
Mm.
right? Has nothing to do with you. Even though their cousin, even though their nephew may not have all of the same credentials and may not be as qualified for the job, the nephew gets the job and you don't. That's not God's plan, in my opinion. That's not his plan. God's plan was for you to have that job. God set that up. God made the steps to make that happen, and those people along the way that were part of that step, they made the right choices. And as long as people were making the choices, that they were supposed to make, you kept moving forward towards what God wants you to have.
Okay.
At the last step, somebody decides that they're not gonna make the decision. And so, and I think most people know, what your conscience tells you. That's why you have one. You know that your conscience is in there telling that one person, like, this person is the right person for the job, but my nephew really needs a job. You know. Anyway, now that doesn't mean that they're bad in their heart. That's not what that means. It just means that's not the decision they should have made.
Yeah.
Now, this is all conjecture, of course, until you apply it to a real life, which is what I've done with this book.
Yeah.
Okay. Once I began to compartmentalize the different things in my life and begin to look at them through a different lens, I began to understand that there were a lot of people in my life, throughout my life, that I had met, that I had, that did not do things that really could have helped me. Okay. They didn't do things that could have altered, now, things that I feel like and I believe that God wanted me to have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, so, but the person who's disappointed the most is not those people. It's me. That means that I'm flawed and I need to change my belief system. And so what I began to do was I began to look at it and I turned that back on myself. And I started to look at how many people in my life I could have helped.
Yeah.
Right. That, I didn't. And I thought, maybe that would have made a difference. I'm not saying that I didn't try to help people at times, but to be completely honest, my focus really wasn't on somebody else's happiness.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on reaching my goals, reaching my objectives, so on and so forth. And so I wanted to change that. I wanted to change that about myself. Okay. Because I can't change that about everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you about it. I can tell you that if you look at something and you look at a situation from someone else and you say, you know what, if I do this, I can really help this person.
Yeah.
I can really help them. Okay. Then, you've made a difference. Then you've made a difference in helping somebody get a little bit closer to their dreams, to their goals, to the things that they want to reach. Now, I don't want to speak as though the world is this completely negative place and I don't think that's true. I think what it is that I think we live in a society where everyone is so inundated with just everything that they don't really take the time to think about it. I think they're just trying to get through their days. And so this is certainly not, a judgment. I think that we're all guilty of that because life is very hectic and very busy and so on and so forth.
For sure.
But if we can start to be more cognizant of the fact that every little decision we make affects someone else, anyway, and sometimes, if not most of the time, that decision might be really positive for someone else. And I think I'll elaborate a little bit on this as well. I've interviewed hundreds of people in my career. Okay, all different levels of stature and success in life. Okay, and here is the one common denominator among every single person that ever achieved something that they wanted. Now, I didn't discover this at the time when I was writing the book. I discovered it after my perspective changed, because I began looking at interviews differently and I began asking different questions. But the one common denominator is that every single person was given a chance. Every single person. Not one single person said, you know what, I did this on my own. Every single person said, you know, um, and I remember thinking, back on interviews I had done, and one of them being with, the late actor Larry Sellers, and Larry Sellers had garnered quite a bit of fame, anyway. But before he was an actor, he was a stuntman. Okay, somebody at some point said, you know what, I'm gonna give you a shot. Okay, and they did, and guess what? That propelled him to a new level that he wanted to achieve. Okay, if no one would have given him that opportunity, he would have been basically a nameless stunt man.
Yeah.
Okay, in his career, and so as I started thinking back on these things, I began to realize that person did the right thing. That person looked at the situation and said, whatever their motives were, they looked at someone and said, I'm going to give you a shot. And so that I felt like in my life, I felt like that I had been I have been one of the majority of people in the world that don't get the chance. Okay, that's what I felt like, and to a certain degree, I still feel that way. I feel like that there's a lot of people who don't for what and that's not to say that their intent is malicious or they're even aware of it. Yeah. I just think that we're not open to the prospect that, or to the reality, I should say, that we have a responsibility for everyone else. So I hope that sort of,
absolutely. I mean, it sounds like it's been a journey writing this book. Clearly, I mean, you have a lot to say on it. So you talked about your perspective of God changing from the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Yes.
Could you kind of run through those?
Sure. So as it pertains to the belief system, because my belief system was that God gave me this desire to be a writer. He gave me this desire to want to be more than somebody who just sits at home and writes poetry. I mean, I had a desire to really go to the next level anyway. And now I'm at a certain age and I've been doing this for, I've been writing for 30 years and I'm not where I want to be. Well, that's God's fault. God gave me the desire. It's his fault, right? I mean, why give me, so you can see where the anger would come from. Like, why give me the desire, but not give me the vehicle to get to where I feel like, because it's, anyone that has a dream will tell you the same thing. Okay. They don't know where it comes from, and there's some sort of fuel that drives it that they can't tell you where that comes from either. But it's there, and it's there every single day, and it never lets up. Okay, so it's not like you get relief from it. It doesn't work that way. It's when you have that dream, it's like there's some sort of cosmic spiritual force, whatever you want to call it, that's driving that. It's keeping you going.
Just keeps you running.
So it's like that's what keeps you from not giving up. And any successful person that's ever reached a dream that they had will tell you the same thing. That's what, there was something that kept me going, kept me driving me every day. And so when you keep doing that day after day, year after year, and you don't ever reach that pinnacle that you feel like you're working towards, there has to be a problem. Now, I'm not always saying that problem is someone else because they didn't do what they were supposed to. It can be a lot of different reasons. But I felt like that I had done everything I was supposed to. I had stepped out on faith. I had believed in faith. I had worked 2 and 3 jobs for many years, raising a family, trying to get my career off the ground. I had stayed true to what I believe. I had done, I had put God first, my family second, my career third. I had done that because I believed that that's what I was supposed to do. You know, I had, so, I had done these things that I felt like all these things were right, and God still did not give it to me. So that's why he's wrong. That's why I felt like he was
Hmm.
wrong in the beginning. By the middle of the book, as I'm writing this, I begin to understand that there was a dynamic there that I had never really considered. And that dynamic was that somewhere in the middle, that okay, maybe maybe some people are responsible to help me, and I'd never really thought of that, and so that shares a responsibility. Now I'm like, okay, but God still could have overridden that. You see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the middle, I'm like, God still had the power to override that
Hmm.
and make it happen, and He didn't. But I'll give him, I will concede to the fact that maybe some other people would have done some things. That's where I was at by the middle. By the end of the book, I began to realize that God is, if God were standing in front of me, he would literally say, um, if if I stood here and told you every single thing that I've ever given you in your entire life, okay, then your natural life would end before I finished the list.
Hmm.
Okay, that's how much I've given you.
Yeah.
Why is that not enough? And 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 then to come back and say, you know what? Everything Jesus taught was to love others as though you love yourself. And I'm like, there's a bell that went off, right?
Hmm.
All of a sudden I began to realize, if I loved others like I love myself, what would I be doing for them? Their very successes in life, their very happiness would be as important to me as my own is. And that was a game changer. And that's when I began to realize God has God has done his part.
Hmm.
I mean, he's done. At some point, we have to accept the fact that it's um, that we have a responsibility to one another. And to be quite honest with you, I was nervous for my mom to read the book, because I make some real challenges as to how people perceive God in the book. And so basically what I said was, basically with the let's like say the big secret in the book, I guess, if there is one, is that um, my main belief, the center fundamental of my belief system, was that God can and will do all things
Hmm.
in faith. Okay, well, I no longer believe that.
Okay.
Okay, and and I thought, you know what, I'm probably going to get people who read this are probably going to come back with that, but um, but that was not my mom's response,
Hmm.
and it wasn't anyone else's response, because I feel like I was able to explain to people that uh, that God limits himself, okay, and he has to, in you know the same way that a parent limits themselves by doing everything for their child. It's not the best thing for that child to do everything
Hmm.
for them. And God is our parent. And so it's just, you go to the next level, and God is like, I'm not going to do it for you. Okay. But I still want you to have those things. I still want you,
Hmm. Okay. So from what I'm hearing, it seems like the idea of God gives all and everything is still there, but in order for that to really take precedence, you also have to act on it yourself. And that can be giving things, that can be, you know, taking the steps to get a certain job or whatever. Um, but it's a not a one-way street, right? It's not
right?
just, he doesn't just give you everything. You can't just take it as it is.
Because you're not, right. Because you're not, as I said, he gears it up for you.
Yes.
Right. Because he
Hmm.
wants you to have it. So he gears it up for
Hmm.
you, whether it's a job or a promotion or some accomplishment or whatever. He gears it up for you. But there's factors in play. You have to do your part. You know, you have to show up. You have to do the work. You have to do your part. Um, and I think what happens in life is that God is, so many people, and people that I know, they do the work, they put in the effort, okay, but then you know they get there, and then somebody else doesn't do it. They don't do what they're supposed to do, right? You're helping God. That's how I feel like. That's what I feel like you're doing, because what you're doing out of love. You're doing it out of this brotherly and sisterly type love, and and that is exactly what we're taught. It's exactly what Scripture teaches. And so, um, it just goes back. God's not going to give us everything we want, but He's going to give us opportunities. Anyway, and opportunities they're two sides of the same coin. You have to do your work, but the other people have to do their work too. It's the only way. That's the only way. It's the only way it can work. And so often, guess what? It doesn't work, because these people may have been, and you could flip that. These people may have been 100% eager to hire you. If you want to look back at an interview, okay, they were like, "This is the perfect guy. We can't wait for him to come in," but you don't show up, right? That's not God's fault. So you go. It works both ways. You could come in and but if you show up and you do your part, and they show up and do their part,
Everything melds.
you meld, and you win. Like, you win. Okay. Anyway, I mean, and I feel like in so many different aspects of life that does not happen. And so all of that came, is reflected in this book. So that's,
Yeah. And speaking of that, cover is sweet.
so
Tell me about it.
sure. So this, um, um, so the concept at the time, once I had the name, and I knew in my mind what I wanted, is that we all have, think back to the Garden of Eden and the tree of knowledge. And so there's a tree and there's all this knowledge in it. Now, for humans, in the world that we live in, this knowledge is falling down, and you have all these different things that go on in life. You have like money, and you have religion, and you have ideals and principles, and they're kind of, down here, you may not be able to see them, but there's like a dollar sign and a cross and a peace sign and a percentage sign and all these things, right? And these are what we're surrounded with. And these things are how we view life. This is the things that we're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, and we become consumed with them, okay, as opposed to what we should be. Anyway, and this is a representation of my life. Is I had been focused on things, and so on things that shouldn't have been as important as helping others, and the same was true for me. Others too had been, and so I no longer wanted to live my life that way.
Yeah.
So I'm chopping this down. And I'm planning a new belief system. Okay, and I'm gonna cut this down and burn this to ash. I want this to be gone. I want a new belief system, and that new belief system becomes a fundamental part of my everyday life, is to pay attention to how I can help someone else. What can I do to help them? Because you know what? I don't know that I am, but I might be the person that God has put in place to help somebody get somewhere they need to go or they need to be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for telling me about all this. I really appreciate that.
I appreciate you listening. I'm as I said, I'm very passionate about the message or messages that are in this book. And so, I appreciate you taking the time to listen and give me an opportunity to tell others.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you all want to check out Chopping Down the Tree of Knowledge, where can we find this?
So it's available. Actually, you can get them worldwide. The easiest place is Amazon. Just go straight to Amazon and just put in the title, and or my name's C.L. Harmon, and it will you should pull it right up.
Okay.
And yeah. Anyway, I hope people check it out. I feel like there's some good messages in there, and anyway, so I'm,
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell people about it.
Perfect. Yeah.